Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and today we're going to take a look at the micro-atx wonder that is the Kolink Citadel Mesh RGB. Keep watching to find out more. So on today's video we will be taking a look at the Kolink Citadel Mesh RGB. Now this case actually is a pretty decent price. At the moment in the UK you can pick them up for around about the £55 mark. I have seen them as much as £75 and I've seen them slightly less as well. So around about the £50 mark is where you should be looking at the moment at the end of August 2020. So I think what month it was then. But this case offers tons and tons of features, loads of flexibility, some really cool features, and I think it comes in at a really nice price point. And being that most of the B550 motherboards that are on the market now, if you're into building a AM4 system, a lot of the really good bargains seem to be for micro-ATX boards, then maybe it's now the time to look at a micro-ATX build. Over the years, micro-ATX has always been seen as the kind of slightly downsized and kind of stepchild of the ATX family, which is what people generally tend to prefer. Bigger is better, right? Well, not always. In this case, pun intended, micro-ATX actually makes a ton of sense, and actually, I don't know what you think, but I think this looks fantastic. It's got a really nice look to it. When I saw the pictures of it, it actually seemed a lot more kind of squat, but actually when you get it in front of you, it does seem a little bit taller and a lot more like an ATX or micro-ATX case, rather than being more of a cube. There is another version of this that I've seen on the market, which is a slightly cheaper version, which has got these big 200mm or 160mm fans on the front, which makes it look really squat. Whereas this, I think, with the nice fans in there, just makes it look a little bit more slender, like it's been to Weight Watchers. Okay, so that's enough waffle. Let's talk about this case and what we actually get for the money. So as you can see, obviously this is a mesh fronted case, so airflow aplenty, and also we've got a decent level of dust filtration. Smaller particles are still going to get through, but that is the trade-off of having a high airflow case. But you've got ventilation on both sides, and also this massive panel in the front. Behind the panel, you've got two 120mm RGB fans. These are addressable RGB fans. These have got a standard 4-pin PWM style power connection for the actual fans themselves. The RGB side of it is taken care of by the RGB controller, which is inside, which we'll take a look at a little bit later. But essentially, as you get it out of the box, two fans up front, one fan in the rear, in a really cool little case. I think the value actually does add up on this one. So moving around to the side of the case, now this is where things get really cool. On the side is this little pull handle, and the actual glass side panel is on basically magnets and also hinges on the back. So you can just pull that and pop the case open, and you can get access to all your lovely bits inside, which for me is actually brilliant. I love being able to just pop the case open, go in, maybe tinker with a cable, attach a fan, all those kinds of things, maybe just wipe a little bit of dust off the inside of the case. It's great. It is a tweaker's delight. You can get such easy access to this. And also it means that if you want to, while you're building it, you can actually take this off altogether. It is hinged and it will bend round pretty much all the way round to the back towards where your IO is. So you've got about 270 degrees worth of travel on the glass before it actually starts becoming a pain. But you can, like I said, you can remove it off the hinges if you wanted to. So looking inside the case itself, so starting from the rear, we've got our extra 120mm addressable RGB fan, and fans actually pretty decent noise to them. I've got my lav mic on. The fans have been set in the MSI Dragon software to be relatively quiet. The noisiest thing in this system actually at the moment is the power supply, which is an older CIT one, but other than that the system is pretty much whisper quiet, even though it is using the stock AMD cooler on the 3100 there. Anyway, moving down, so we've got an option here, so you can have a horizontal mounted graphics card or vertical mounted, whichever you choose. There is enough room on there for a 2-slot version. If you need a 3-slot, unfortunately you can't do it in the upright mounting, but there is plenty of room there for most modern cards. Also at the bottom there's two little screw holes there. Included in the packaging there is actually another bracket. There isn't a PCI Express riser card, unfortunately. The actual cable itself, you will have to purchase that yourself, but there is actually a really nice mounting mechanism which can be screwed to there. The cable can be screwed to it, so it gives you a really nice stable place to put your graphics card, which is really nice to see. Graphics cards, you can get in there up to 340mm graphics cards, so pretty big size cards. There's a GeForce GTX 1070, which comes quite a way up, but there is also room, should I want to put an AIO in the front. In the front, you can have either a 240 or a 280 all-in-one radiator if you wanted to, and that is with the fans there. You can mount them behind there. If you've got a AIO, which has got captive fans on there, you might find it a little bit of a struggle because the fans need to be in front of the kind of frame of the case, whereas the AIO needs to be behind, so you may need to tweak that a little bit to make it work for you. Plenty of ventilation again in here, so on the back we've already got one 20mm fan. You can, if you want to, you can put a 140 in there. There's a little bit of adjustment up and down, so there's lots of punch outs and bits and pieces there. So depending how you've got your graphics card mounted, if you're sticking with the traditional mounting method, you can have a much larger fan in the rear and have it lower down if you wanted to, or if you're going with the vertical mount, then obviously the fan would be pretty much in the position it's in now. But you can still, I think, get a 140 in there without too much difficulty. In the top section, you've got room in here for either two 140mm fans, two 120mm fans, or a 240mm AIO. Unfortunately, a 280 is a little bit too close to the motherboard and your kind of memory sticks, etc, etc. But yeah, a 240 in a case of this size I think is absolutely ample. Anything too much bigger and it's going to look a little bit crowded in there. On the top, you've got a removable magnetic dust filter, as you generally expect to see these days. And on the top, you've got that really nice honeycomb airflow section to let all the hot air out. Although saying that, there isn't a lot of hot air to let out because the positive pressure created by the two 120s in the front and the single 120 in the back, and you do get a little bit of exhaust from the power supply, but not a great deal. So we're talking positive pressure, so that is going to reduce the dust. So moving back onto the inside, like I said before, this is a micro-ATX case, so caters for micro-ATX motherboards and also ITX motherboards, should you see the need to put one in there. I think micro-ATX boards do look great in this particular setup. It does fill the space up rather nicely. But the space that we have got left over is really useful also. So at the front here where the fans are on this back plate, there's a mounting area there for two 2.5-inch SSDs or old-fashioned mechanical drives if you wanted to. You can put those there if you want. There is also space underneath in this basement section for an additional 3.5-inch drive, or two 3.5-inch drives, 3.5-inch drive and a 2.5-inch drive. Yeah, there's lots of room for drives. Basically, most storage nowadays generally is starting to go M.2, so these extra spaces are more of a luxury now than anything. So we're going to move back round to the front now, and this is something which I'm not really keen on doing, but I am going to try and do it anyway, and that is taking off the front. People will say, oh Mike, how do you take the front panel off? This one is really difficult to get off, extremely difficult to get off, and you have to put an awful lot of pressure from the grab handle on the front to get it off. Whether it's just because my production sample is like this, I don't know. They may all be like this, so if you've got one and your case front panel is difficult to get off, yeah, so's mine. So let's give it a go. Hopefully I won't knock the camera off its tripod. Yeah, as you can see, that takes a lot of pressure and a lot of torque to get it off. But once it's off, happy days. And as you can see, got a really nice mesh there, really nice and see-through. So yeah, could use it as a COVID mask if you wanted to, but probably not a good idea. Anyway, going back to the fans, so we've got these two lovely addressable RGB fans. The RGB can be controlled by the motherboard, or actually there is a remote control which comes with the case, which I conveniently left on the other side of the desk. So with this remote control, you can go through and change various features on the addressable RGB, or you can set it to go back to motherboard control, turn on, off, etc, etc. And there's a couple of presets built in as well. But if for some reason you're a lazy what's-it and you can't find your remote control and you can't be bothered to open up the software, all is not lost, because you can just press a button on the top and you can cycle through all the lighting options. And actually some of the ones that are built into the controller are really, really nice. And the fans themselves, these are a little bit different. They, I'm not too sure what you'd even call it. You've almost got two lots of RGB going on there. Try not to put your fingers in the fans, boys and girls. It's not good fun. But anyway, I think they look really, really good. And again, you can cycle through those various things of various levels of inducing seizures, that kind of stuff. Like that is what is going on there. Absolutely insane, the types of lighting styles on here. But also there's the more sedate stuff, so you've got your unicorn puke, you've got your tracers, that sort of thing. Bit of red, bit of green, bit of blue, bit of white, going through the colours. Again, loads of little options on there. And if you want to hand back control back to the motherboard, you can either press the MB button on here, which then takes it back to the MSI software, which you've pre-installed, or you can press and hold the button on the top, the RGB button, and it will do the job for you. So all in all, yeah, the RGB setup, There is one downside, which we'll get to in a little bit, but other than that, I think this is a really cool setup, and the fans themselves actually, considering this case you can get on its own, the plain version without the mesh front for £40. You can get the version like this without any RGB, but with a mesh front for about £45. If you want it with the fans, the mesh, basically the top of the line version, you're looking at about £55–60. So I think it's actually pretty good value for money. If you were to put a price on these fans, realistically, kind of £8 to £10 each for the fans, a controller which is built in as well, maybe another £10 or so. So you've got about £30 to £40 worth of extra value for the sake of an extra kind of 20 quid really, which for me is brilliant. So the back panel is a little bit flexy, but again, it's held in actually really well. There's a ridge that runs all the way along this front channel, and the back section holds in really nicely. So although it's wobbly when it's off the case, when it's actually on the case, it does a pretty decent job. And also in the back here, you've got tons and tons of room. Now I have deliberately done a really crappy job of cable management and wiring, and essentially I've just thrown it in there. Chuck the power supply in. I was hoping that I would find its weakness being cable management, and that if I kind of just stuffed all the cables in, maybe I wouldn't be able to get the back panel on, that kind of thing. But no, absolutely fine, no issues at all. And because it hooks in at the front, it's quite nice. You can hook it in at the front and kind of push the cables in a little bit, put on your thumb screws, job done. Obviously, if you want to, you can go absolutely bananas with cable ties and tie downs and all that kind of stuff and make a super tidy job of it. I chose not to. So as you can see, I've stuffed the cables in around here, and there's no issues there. We've got loads of clearance between the motherboard back tray and the back panel here, so loads and loads of room. Tons of punch outs as well, so we've got a punch out here for your ATX extra power supply. You've got some cables, punch outs there, etc. Holes for running RGB through, which is what I've done there. Big cutout on the front for all your main I/O to come through. And again, the I/O stuff, I've just left it really super messy and just basically chucked it in there. Same as the power supply. The power supply is a completely captive device. All of the cables are in there, and yet even with it all shoved in like that, I've still got reasonable access to the 3.5-inch sled on the bottom, which is removable. So if you've got a power supply from maybe the 1980s and it's got hundreds and hundreds of cables on it, then you can remove that sled on the bottom and just stuff it full of cabling. Or alternatively, you can do what I should have done and make a really nice job of it and actually put a drive in there as well. So power supply, again, I deliberately built this the wrong way around. So I put the motherboard in and I connected up all the front panel, then I put the power supply in, hoping again to kind of find a weakness. But even with all the cables connected and going through the punch outs in the bottom with the pass-throughs, power supply just slid in, no problems at all, and attached really nicely. There is foam pads which the power supply sits on to reduce those vibrations and stuff, so that's really good. But overall, I found it an absolute pleasure to build in. It's been a long time coming recently. I've had a few cases which have been a bit problematic with cable management or trying to get the back panels on, or I've deliberately had to use kind of licorice style cables to really get them flat as possible in the back. But this thing is, it's like a little TARDIS, it's fantastic. There is so much room on the inside. Also as well, you can see quite clearly where we've got our CPU cutout area. Now this is one area which I thought was going to let me down. The motherboard, the backplate for the AMD processor here, is actually very close, and if you're not looking directly on, you would say it was covered up, but actually there is room on there. I have tried it, loosened the screws off. The back plate is very easy to remove and go back on, so no issues there, although I was a little bit concerned, if I'm completely honest. It's not the biggest of punch outs. The next thing down is this horrible green PCB, which is forgivable because it's hidden, but it's unforgivable because it shouldn't be that color. Come on, it's 2020, times have moved on. We could have a black PCB surely, but being that it's green actually makes it easier to read what is actually on the labeling, so all is not lost. So on this controller, we've got, on this side, we've got a SATA power connector, which I've tucked in at the bottom here. Then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 outputs for PWM fans. On the side here, we've got 2 outputs. One is for your PWM signal that routes to your motherboard, and the other one is for your addressable RGB, which has gone up through and is attached to the motherboard, again for that pass-through feature. There is also a LED reset switch button there, which is again on the front panel there, so you can press that and cycle through. But it's all based on RF technology, so it's not infrared, it works through the metal, through glass, etc, etc, so you've got no real issues there. On this top section, this is the one thing which I'm not entirely keen on. So at the top we've got the 3-pin addressable RGBs, but they're not the normal 3-pin RGBs, so they are a custom Kolink version. So if you did want to add more fans to this, if you're just using normal fans without addressable RGB, absolutely fine. You can just plug them into the headers here. I've chosen actually on this particular one to have more control over the fans, so I've plugged them into the motherboard. There's only 3 fans, so most motherboards have got 3 fan headers, so that isn't an issue. I did find with the built-in controller that there wasn't a particularly good amount of control over the fans. They did seem to rev a little bit on the high side for my personal liking, and also for making content you don't really want fans to be spinning too fast. I was finding them around about 1300 RPM, which for 1200mm fans is a little bit on the loud side. So I've chosen to wire them through onto the motherboard, but again, you can do whatever you like with it. Personally, I would say, depending on what you've got already, if you've already got RGB fans and possibly a splitter somewhere already, definitely go for the £44 version of this, just the base unit with the mesh front. Stick your own fans in, jobs are good, and as they say. But if you've got none of that and you basically want an off-the-shelf, ready-to-go thing, or maybe you're building a slightly cheaper system to try and sell on, this is perfect because it's all in there. You don't have to worry about the end user having to kind of add extra fans. You can worry about that at a later date. So, again, not perfect, not brilliant, but gets the job done. So I think that is pretty much it from this backside. Again, the RGB controller is the one thing which is a little bit on the meh side. I would have preferred something a little bit better, or at least with normal 3-pin 5V RGB headers. That would have made it much better in my opinion, and also a little bit more control over the fan speeds, but you can't have it all for £60. Okay, so moving round to the rear of the case. So as you can see, standard I/O section here for your motherboard. You've also then got the cutout section here for the 120mm fan, which is included. Again, you could put a 140 in there if you want to, and there's a little bit of adjustment up and down depending on what sort of graphics card you put in there. You can see here a little bit more clearly the vertical mounting option for the GPU. Also, this screw comes out, so if you want to gain access to the side PCI Express punch outs, which actually are the removable ones, so you can take them out, put them back in. Nice thing to see, especially on a slightly more budget case. But undo that screw, this whole section flips out, giving you nice easy access to the screws on there, so that's all really good. Yeah, power supply mounting area at the bottom. All in all, can't really fault it. Also, you can see here, this is the hinge section, so if I open the glass a little bit and just give it a little wiggle up and down, and you can remove the glass in its entirety. So yeah, pretty cool. A little bit more tricky to put back on the glass because the holes aren't offset. Some cases actually have it so that you can have like the top one attached first, so you can line them up, and as you can see I'm struggling. Go on, you can do it. Actually, I'm not on a particularly good angle for this. It's on there. I was concerned then that maybe it was going to drop. Anyway, it's a really nice looking case. And as you can see, the glass there opens all the way around, so if you are building and you want it out of your way whilst you're doing said build, no issues at all. So moving around onto the basement section, or the bottom, so we've got a couple of screws here. Those are for taking out the drive cage which is inside, so 2 screws and you can remove that whole thing. Also, you've got the usual cheapo dust filter on the bottom, which again, not fantastic, but gets the job done. Got some really nice feet on here actually, nice chrome finished feet and large foam pads on there for absorbing vibrations, etc. And then if we flip back up to the top section, so on the top, usual suspects. So we've got the removable magnetic filter, this really nice honeycomb section here, and we've got our offsets. So you've got your 120mm there, and you've got your 140mm there for fans. AIO limited to 240 because of the restrictions on the top there. And IO wise, we've got our power button, so nice clicky power button. Got a reset button next to that. Next to that, you've got your addressable RGB switch button, USB 3.0, headphone jack, microphone jack, USB 2.0, and then another USB 3.0. So 2 USB 3.0s on the front, which is always nice to see, and that additional 2.0 for things like keyboard connections or headsets, that kind of thing, which is great. USB 3s for your faster data transfers. All in all, pretty decent. Okay, so there we go. There is your tour of the case and my little build that's in there. Now the build, if in case you're wondering what it is in there, it is the MSI B550 MDH Pro Wi-Fi. So I've finally done the build on that. That's running with a Silicon Power PCI Express 4x4 NVMe drive, 1TB. Also, we've got the Ryzen 3 3100 in there, 16 gigs of V-Color RAM, which is the DDR4 4000 MHz. And that actually ran as XMP straight away, so really pleased with that. Again, RGB is controlled via the case or the Mystic Light software, and that works absolutely fine, no problems at all. Overall, very, very happy. Temperature-wise, done really well. After I set the fans to my own personal liking, so basically there's a curve maybe from around about sort of 50 degrees up to 70 degrees being the maximum for the CPU, and 70 degrees on the CPU means the fans would be at 100%. Under testing, load testing, I just used CPU-Z, the benchmark test in there, and left that running for about an hour, and the max we saw on the CPU was 65 degrees C, which, considering this is just the stealth cooler in there, with no other real great cooling other than the airflow which is coming from these fans, I think it's done particularly well. So yeah, under load for an hour for 65 degrees, I think it's awesome, especially in a micro-ATX case. You would not normally expect that. But anyway, overall, very, very pleased. I'll be doing some more benchmarks, more testing on this as time goes on. If you've got any comments or questions about it, please do let us know. I will leave some links for this case from overclockers.co.uk. I'm sure you'll be able to pick it up elsewhere, but I will leave links there for now. So if you want to pick one up, feel free to do so. But there we go. That has been the Kolink Citadel Mesh RGB. I've been Mike. This is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.